Another beautiful day here in Florida. Hi there, this is Judd. This is the continuing story of the redoing of the lady. I did some experiments last night with the gesso and the paint towards the goal of coloring this thing. This is a piece off the lady before I started this whole process. This is actually the reason I did the whole thing, was to take this piece off the top because it made it too tall to hang up anywhere. I've never had a ceiling tall enough to hang the lady. That's why I had it on my ceiling, actually. And the first thing is, this is finished with a couple of coats of polyacrylic, so it has a very smooth surface. Not glossy, it's satin finish, but it's very smooth. And that's not what gesso was made for. And so it's not taking real well. You can see I put one coat on here, and then I put a second coat of gesso on it. And even on the second coat, you can see there's still streaks and things showing. And then I put a brush stroke of the red over the two coats of gesso and the bare wood, and you can see they're not covering as well as one might want. But it also shows me that the red over the gesso kicks up. It's brighter, much brighter than over the plain wood, which is what I want. So I am going to have to gesso the whole thing. And up here I did some red paint and gesso, much watered down, which gave a more even coverage, but very thin coverage. So that would take several coats of that watered down, but it went on much better without all the brush strokes. So this brings me to the point of basically I'm going to have to gesso all the flowers, and I might have to gesso the border around them because it's going to be so difficult to get in all the flowers without hitting the borders. I don't know, I haven't decided on that yet. If I do have to paint the border, then I'll color it with some sort of green that goes with this. But this is the brightness I want on the coloring, so that does demand that I gesso the thing. So that's what we're looking at for the next step on the processing, the reprocessing, the redoing of the lady. And meanwhile, I'm just sitting here relaxing, trying to build up a little energy to get at it. I don't like painting. Even when I was a handyman, I did not paint. That was one thing I didn't do. If I'd built something, yeah, I'd paint it. But if somebody wanted to hire a painter, I'd go get a painter. I'm not a painter. So I'm just going to sit here and enjoy this beautiful Florida afternoon after several very cold nights. Well, I thought they were cold, but it's beautiful today. Back to the lady. I'm not sure what my decision is, but right now I'm going to use some fairly watered down gesso. Go ahead and gesso this thing. To get the bright red, I do have to do the gesso. So that's where we're going. Okay. And we're going to water that down a bit. That might be enough. Now the other problem is I don't have any brushes that I really like for this. But now see, one of the problems is gesso was actually meant to fill the holes in canvas, to give a smooth surface on canvas, and I'm putting it over a gloss finish. So it's not something that really wants to be there. It's not going to take real good for that. I'm using it more as a paint than as a filler. As a primer coat, actually. And then there's also the problem of, in doing this, I've got to try to keep it off of these background areas, these vertical areas. And in here, I've actually got spaces between petals of the flower that should not be painted, but if they do get painted, so it's going to be tricky getting them done without getting any on those areas that I don't want it on. Or I could go all the way, do it all, and then do another color here, maybe a dark green or something. I don't know. But so this is a little more complicated than I intended or hoped for. and my eyes aren't what they used to be. So we'll go ahead and see what we can get here. If we go on with the gesso, and more light. I need more light. That gives me more light without blinding me. Now I'm going to try something else. Check this out. Okay, that's giving good coverage, but it's not going to give me delicate coverage. Boy, look at that jump out. Yeah, that is going to get all over the outside edges. Wow. I'm just going to have to bite the bullet and do the whole thing. Oh, God. Paper towel, water. Too many outlying bristles here. Oof. This is where it's going to get real tricky down here. What do I do down there? Now what do I do down here? Ah. Oh, God. Okay. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, baby. I gotta take a break and think. I may have created an impossible situation here. Okay. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to go backwards a couple of steps. I'm just going to go ahead and flood paint with gesso the whole thing, and then I'll just have to sand down the outer areas again to get rid of that color and then refinish the whole thing. The only problem is down here, when I get down to this area, these are above the background. These are all below the background. These are above the background. So I'm going to have to try to taper it off into there. But from the leaves on up, I'm just going to have to flood fill and then do a whole bunch of refinishing. Well, when I said a do-over on this thing, I meant it. There's really no other way out. Of course, I could just paint the whole damn thing white. But that'd kind of kill the whole point of it. Probably should have done the flower coloring in oils. It would have taken better to the gloss finish than was going over. Okay. Okay. There we go. Now, we're probably going to take a second coat of gesso, same thing again, and then color it, and then clean up the edges and refinish. And have the colors, because I've thinned out the gesso down here. I'm not going to do a second coat of gesso down here. So the colors will fade as we go into here. By the time we get to here, it should be okay. So that's where I stand for tonight. Good night and good luck.